The moment autumn arrived, I began my basically annual rewatch of Gilmore Girls. It's a show that I grew up watching, giving it an automatic advantage for me, but I also believe it to be a pretty good show. It's funny, it's cozy, and it has some lovable characters. Notice, though, that I say some lovable characters, not all. One of the most widespread and pretty understandable criticisms of the show is a dislike of the main character, Rory. People have differing reasons for not liking her. She can be annoying, a bad friend, and often straight up cruel.
You called me a hippo! No, I compared you to a hippo. That's not calling you a hippo.
But the element that tends to solidify people's ill feelings towards her is her privilege. Gilmore Girls, of course, is not alone in this attribute. Look at every coming-of-age movie ever. Lady Bird, Booksmart, 8th Grade, Juno, Boyhood, Submarine, The Edge of 17. These aren't all incredibly privileged protagonists, but they are all white, and many of them do really embody privilege. Rory's combination of being a straight white rich girl isn't uncommon for movies and TV, but within the coming-of-age genre, this combination of traits becomes a little more notable, because these stories tend to explore or at least touch on themes of economic anxiety. After all, to come of age is to reckon with the limitations and difficulties of life as an adult, and what characterizes adult life more than economic struggle? Obviously, I'm generalizing. Coming-of-age stories may, and often do, look at issues of sexuality, identity, relationships, and lots more. But questions of money and class are really common. Many coming-of-age films look at these issues through the lens of poverty. Take The Florida Project, a beautiful film which offers an unflinching portrait of a girl and her mother's life in poverty. But those aren't the films I'm referring to. I want to talk about Gilmore Girls and Lady Bird, two pieces of media that incorporate these themes of economic anxiety, but through the eyes of privilege. Rory, the teenage main character of Gilmore Girls, can be kind, funny, and lovable, but she's often not. Rory is a bit of a peaked in high school cliché. She spends her childhood constantly babied by her family.
I need you here, I need you now. I cannot do this alone. I need my mommy, and damn it, I don't care who knows it.
And reminded of her supposed superiority to her peers, and then flounders as she grows up.
Sorry, I just didn't have a pitch prepared.
That's a little weird.
Worse yet, she's generally pretty unaware of her various privileges. She does grow up with a single mother, but her family still has a lot of old money that allows her to get an excellent and expensive education. Even her not particularly wealthy mother, Lorelai, at times has the family money to fall back on.
I get $75,000 for being born?
I thought it would be a pleasant surprise.
And yet Rory tends to see herself as a victim, or at least as less than privileged. It's more than anything this lack of understanding of her privilege that can make Rory so irritating. While her grandparents are unabashedly painted as out of touch, a glaring example of the aristocratic society they live in, Lorelai and Rory always make sure to distance themselves from this lifestyle and label themselves as pretty working class, despite the fact that they're at any time able to give Emily a phone call asking for some extra cash. These issues are all exacerbated in the follow-on of A Year in the Life. While even Emily finds some growth, finally hiring a housekeeper she appreciates, Rory, if anything, gets worse.
Maybe I peaked in high school. Oh, man, that's a depressing thought.
Despite being an adult now, she hasn't outgrown most of her flaws, remaining often selfish, impulsive, amoral, and entitled. Her financial privilege still follows her. Take this scene where she throws away multiple working phones, or the fact that she's able to pass up numerous excellent job opportunities over tiny qualms, without worrying too much about her financial situation. To put this into context, a 2019 study of 1,000 college students found that 61% would, quote, take a job they're not passionate about due to the pressure to pay off their student loans. So Rory's complete lack of student debt despite attending an Ivy League school makes her unrelatable at best and at worst completely out of touch. The overarching issue with Rory can largely be summed up in one quote from the show.
And if she's got what it takes, she'll bounce back.
This is said about her after she's met with some career issues, and it's a pretty reasonable assessment. But no matter the situation, Rory never seems to bounce back. She's coddled, comforted, feeling victimized, but never really having to endure significant struggles because of her privilege. Next in this section, I want to talk about Lady Bird. Some people fully despise Lady Bird, which personally I don't agree with. I liked a lot of it, as I generally like a lot of what Greta Gerwig does. But anyway, Lady Bird. There's definitely some issues. The eponymous protagonist, Lady Bird, dreams of moving away, living somewhere with, as she puts it, culture.
I want to go where culture is, like
How in
New
the world
York.
did
In fact, she's terrified of ending up in a boring 9-to-5 suburban life.
I wish I could live through something.
which is a privilege in of itself, the idea that this is the most horrifying conceivable future for her. And this idea isn't limited to this character. Even on social media, I often see people describing their nightmare life as basically middle-class America. Which, I mean, also is not my dream life, but this mindset is intertwined with the same unawareness of privilege that Rory demonstrates. All that said, Lady Bird isn't made to be entirely likable. Many argue that we're supposed to look at her and think to ourselves, she's dumb, she's immature. She is, after all, a teenager figuring stuff out. She's obviously meant to be a flawed character, at least to some extent. That said, some of her flaws go past simple teenage angst, which I'll get into in the next section. Basically every character in Gilmore Girls who is significant and or positively portrayed is a skinny, privileged white woman, and many of the jokes even rely on putting down characters who don't fit this description.
We're gonna have to leave the country and have extensive facial surgery and sex changes, both of us, so that we can, kiss and not look funny.
And I mean, the show was created at a time when some insensitive jokes could fly, but you'd expect that at least a year in the life would make some changes to the more iffy lines.
Ellie alert.
Holy moly.
Some do have qualms with the main criticisms of A Year in the Life, though. In her article Confronting Privilege and Feminine Constructs in the Gilmore Girls revival, Carolyn Madden asks, why are we so adamant to admonish a woman in her 30s who does not have it all together, however ambitious or successful she was as a young girl? However, I'd argue Rory's floundering in adulthood is more than just your standard not having it all together, but a result of the unacknowledged privilege that plagues the entire show. And the only people of color in Gilmore Girls, save for Lane, are portrayed pretty poorly, often as cruel and strict.
Get home, right now!
This isn't only bad representation, but a missed opportunity. Many Gilmore Girls viewers today, especially Asian women, comment that they found Lane to be incredibly relatable. Even I found her relatable, in that she has excellent music taste.
And the Foo Fighters. Gods. I mean, have you heard the acoustic version of Everlong?
But unfortunately, her character is rarely fully explored. She has a really compelling character and storyline, her hobbies, her relationship with her mother, her love life, there's lots to look at.
You may move out and live like that somewhere else.
But she gets pretty little screen time, not to mention that, spoiler alert, she ends up with Zach and not Dave, which is not very relevant to this video, but nonetheless I hold a moral obligation to complain about that at least once. Anyway, Lady Bird features a similarly all-white cast. Despite being set in Sacramento in 2002, the very same year that Harvard's Civil Rights Project, conducted for Time magazine, named Sacramento America's most diverse city. This whiteness is also reflected in the script. Lady Bird herself has some instances of casual racism.
You fucking racist.
I didn't say anything.
I didn't put down my race.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they had no idea, Miguel.
You're actually fucking evil.
Sometimes Lady Bird is flawed in a dumb teen way, but there's some overarching issues that taint the film, especially for people of color. Zoe Samudzi wrote an excellent Vice article on this topic in which she writes, "It was almost as if the characters were created to prepare me for a life of subordination to the narratives and life stories and yearnings and desires and humanities of white women." The saturation of the coming-of-age genre with these types of stories has pushed out the stories we really need, innovative, diverse ones. I'd be lying if I said that I don't have a distinct love for these films. Despite understanding a good 5% of the cultural references that Lorelai makes, Gilmore Girls is one of my favorite rewatches. And Lady Bird, for all of its whiny characters, was also a really enjoyable watch for me. But of course, my enjoyment of these films comes from a place of privilege. I get to watch these characters and feel empathetic, connected, often even find them relatable. It's a privilege that I originally watched Gilmore Girls and Lady Bird without even thinking about the lack of representation. And though part of my love for shows like Gilmore Girls might come from how I relate to them, since I too am a white, decently well-off girl whose worries rarely surpass those of the main characters, even if this weren't the case, I might still like them. Because, after all, as Aditi Natasha Kinney for The Week writes, white mediocrity is the lowest common denominator, often offering up aspects that can be widely related to. And for me and many other white and or otherwise privileged people, that works, and makes these films more compelling. Watching them might even be aspirational. After all, I think we all dream of a world where our biggest fear is not getting into Harvard. And obviously, no one's trying to cancel Greta Gerwig or shame Amy Sherman Palladino because of these movies and shows. Though Amy Sherman-Palladino has said some things that maybe she should be shamed a little for.
Someone said, oh God, I hope we don't see the eating disorder show. You won't, because I don't give a flying about that.
But for the most part, writers obviously aren't creating stories like this out of hatred or bigotry. As director Joe Swanberg has said, it's just easier to tell stories about white people who are my same age and going through the same things that I'm going through, like that just comes naturally and I don't have to think about that. This isn't born out of any hatred or prejudice, it's just born out of laziness. Without even thinking about it, you could be perpetuating a really damaging system. But more importantly, he goes on to say, it's going to take a concerted effort on everybody's part to do the thing that is more difficult. I try to always end my video essays with some sort of examples of films and TV shows who are doing a better job at this, so let's talk about those. There is, thankfully, a variety of more diverse coming-of-age media out there. Specifically, I want to highlight the film Real Women Have Curves, which Lady Bird is often called the whitewashed version of. The main character of Real Women Have Curves also dreams of attending a New York university, and she also has a complicated relationship with her overbearing mother, but there's also more. The film looks deeply at issues of class, sexism, race, body image, and more.
How dare anybody try to tell me what I should look like or what I should be when there's so much more to me than just my weight?
It's about time that films represent the people coming of age have dreams more diverse than moving away from California, and challenges more diverse than picking between the infinite hot guys all vying for you. Before you go, I want to quickly talk about Movie Palette. Movie Palette creates colorful paintings out of movies that you love. These paintings are made up of stripes, with each stripe representing the predominant color of a scene from that movie. There are a ton of movie and TV show options ranging from Euphoria to Lord of the Rings. Personally, I got the Portrait of a Lady on Fire palette as it's one of my favorite films, and it looks fantastic. These canvases are a great purchase for yourself or for any film-loving friend, and buying one also helps support me so I can continue making content. You can use my code MAYA15 at moviepalette.com for 15% off your purchase. Thank you to Movie Palette for sponsoring me, and thank you for checking out Movie Palette. As always, thank you for watching. Sorry it's been like forever since I uploaded last. Anyway, thank you again for checking out Movie Palette. I very much recommend all their palettes. They're super cool, and I'm very excited to have a sponsorship, of course. And I'll see you next time.